Hello everyone, welcome to Sketchfab. So today I want to show you some things that you can do in Sketchfab. And for those that don't know, Sketchfab is basically a website where you can make an account and you can upload 3D models, and then other people can look at those 3D models without needing any special software or any knowledge or expertise about 3D models. They can navigate around them and manipulate them. You can make collections in Sketchfab, so you can make essentially different groups of related 3D models that you can then use as different, folders. So today I want to show you to use an example of one of these models here. So this is a collection of models that demonstrate different types of dentition in vertebrates, and I'm going to show you how to upload and create a model that looks like this. So I've already got it preloaded in here, so you can see here it's basically made up of 4 different meshes: the jaw, the incisor, and then 3 molars. And to upload something like this, let's start from the home page. And there's this little button in the corner that says upload, and you're going to click it. So you need to have some OBJs ready for upload. So let me just show you what I would upload for this particular model. I've got prepared on my computer here. For each mesh in the model, there's an OBJ and its associated material file. So we've got here our incisor, mandible, and our 3 molars. Then we also have this thing called a ZBrush file. Basically, a ZBrush file is just an empty notepad file, and it's got this particular name, and this is what Sketchfab needs. I think it's got something to do with the code, but it basically tells Sketchfab that there's more than one mesh that makes up this model. If I didn't include this ZBrush file, Sketchfab will just take the first model and think that that's your entire scene. So we need that. This extra file here, it doesn't matter that it's there, but it's not needed, and it is my Mesh Lab project file, which is where I did a little bit of editing to these meshes. So I've got all of these meshes in the same folder. I'm going to go up a level here, and what I want to do is zip them all up together. And I've already done that here. So I would use my zipping software here. I've got 7-zip, and then just add it to a zip file. But I've already had that done. So this is the thing that I want, and you can either hit browse and then navigate to that file location, or you can just drop it in. So I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller, so you can see that I am just grabbing it and dropping it in. Sketchfab does a few checks when you first drop the files in and inspects them and makes sure that you have all the right files. If you have, so for example, if you have your OBJ files and they don't have material files associated with them, it will come up with a little warning that will tell you these models will not upload correctly. Normally the warnings are correct. If you ignore them, your model will not upload correctly, I can tell you from experience. And it does a few checks before it tells you, okay, these are the files that you want to upload. Just for reference, the material file that's associated with each OBJ will be automatically generated by your mesh making software. Normally, there are a few extra steps that you have to take in Mesh Lab, but that's a whole other tutorial. But normally they're just generated automatically. So I'm just going to hit upload, and you'll see this little loading bar that shows you how the upload is progressing. And once the upload has been done, the part that takes a bit longer is this processing part. So you might have to wait a few minutes for this. You might have to wait almost half an hour depending on how big and complex your mesh is. So I am just going to pause the recording while this happens. Okay, so my model has been processed, and that took about 2 or 3 minutes for that to happen. And you'll see the little checkbox come up there when it's processed. Here is the area, this is the properties editor, where you can give it a title. So I'm just going to call it Gray Tree Rat Mandible. You can add information in here, you can add links, you can do a bunch of different types of formatting in the description here. You can add some categories. Sketchfab will only let you add 2 categories at a time. I usually use these 2. And then you can add some tags, and the tags will make your model more searchable. So I usually just put as many as I can think of in here. These kind of keywords that will help a user find what they're looking for. Once you have filled in a description and given it some tags and set the privacy settings, I usually start with them on private, and then when I'm sure the model is ready for the public to see it, I will switch them back onto public. You can make them downloadable, so anyone that has access to the model can then download it. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is click on this big blue button here that says Edit 3D Settings. Oh wait, first I want to save it. So I'm going to click Save. I'm not going to publish it yet because I haven't edited the 3D settings. Okay, so now I'm going to click Edit 3D Settings. And this will bring me into the 3D editor. So now your model has loaded into the 3D editor, and you'll see that it has no color, the background has no color, and it is oriented a little strangely. So the first thing I want to do to this is straighten it out. So I'm just going to check this little box up here, and it's going to come up with a grid. So this grid helps me know what the best way to orient this model is so that it can be manipulated optimally. So I'm just going to flip it around so that it's pointing upwards from the grid. So the grid, it's kind of like a turntable, so you can turn all the way around. You might like to orient them differently depending on how you would like the user to manipulate them, but I'm basically trying to straighten it out and have it hovering over the top of that grid, and you can move it up and down. So now you can see there's some shadows happening there, so I might try and make them look a bit better. There we go. So that's definitely being manipulated a bit more easily than it was before. So the next thing I want to do is choose just how fisheye this view is going to be. Currently it's at 45 degrees, which is quite a lot. I usually pump it all the way down to orthogonal view, but you can make it as fisheyed or as orthogonal as you would like. Once I've adjusted that, I change the background. So you can pick a plain color, which black can look quite nice for these kinds of models. But for this model, I have already prepared in Photoshop an image, just a JPEG, that has a color key and a tiny bit of other information in it. So I've got a color key up there and a little silhouette of the animal in the bottom to give the user some context for what they're looking at. Okay, so that's all that we need to change in this first scene tab here. So we're going to move to the lighting tab. So here, all I would do normally is flick on the lights, and then you'll see 3 little lamps come up here, and you can change the direction of the lights. This is quite bright. So you can change the direction. You can also change the position of the lights. So you just grab these little squares here, and that will let you move them around and change their direction. I usually point them down so that they bring out some of those shadows. This is a blue light, so these are lights of 3 different colors. And well, it looks quite bright, so I might actually just flick the lights off for this particular model, but you can flick them on if you find them useful, which for some models they are. And then next I'm going to go into this materials tab, and this is where I'm going to change the color of each OBJ. So Sketchfab has recognized that there are 5 different materials here, so I can select them by using this little drop down box here. They will highlight in yellow. You just can't see that one. They will highlight in yellow when you click on them, so you can tell which one you're editing. So the first one that I'm going to edit is the mandible here, and I'm going to change the base color to like a light gray, and then I'm going to come down to this opacity heading here, and I'm going to change the opacity to make it see-through. And I know that I usually use about that or thereabouts. And just makes the model see-through so we can see the teeth inside. Then I will change the color of the teeth. So I already know what color I want these teeth to be, and you can see a little preview of it up here in the key, but I have the values recorded here in my handy spreadsheet. So these codes can also be used in other programs like Photoshop or whatever you use to color your meshes or your keys. I find it's better to record the colors so then you can keep using the same ones for your different meshes and keep them consistent, but just copy and paste the values into here. You can choose them by dragging this little thing around and dragging this little slider up and down to change the hue. But I am just going to copy that one into there and then do the same. So you don't have to select your OBJs up here, you can just click on them in the model. So then I want this color for the first molar and just drop it in there, and I'm just going to do that for the other. So you can see I've just finished coloring all of these teeth. So for the colors, you want this PBR map heading, and then you want to change the base color. You can change other things here too, like how shiny they are. You can make them look more metallic, that kind of thing. But for this, I'll let you play around with those settings, and for this, I'll just leave them as they are colored. There are other settings you can change here too, but most of these I don't really use. It's just coloring, changing the shininess and the metallicness and the opacity. So then if we come into our next tab, that's our post-processing filters. So these are settings that are applied to the whole model. I usually use a couple of these. This one here, which adds some sort of shadows and detail to the model. So if you flick it on, you'll see some little shadows come up there that sort of add a bit of depth to it, I think. So I like to use that setting. Another good one is the sharpness setting. If you turn that on, things will just look a little bit sharper. The other ones, there are some interesting ones here. This one gives it a bit of a glow, which I don't really like, but it could work in some situations. This adds some shadow around the edges of the whole scene. Again, that's not something that I really want, so I'm just going to leave those. And the last thing that I would do to this scene is to add annotations. So all you need to do to add an annotation is move the model into a view that you would like Sketchfab to zoom to when you first see this annotation. So I'm going to add an annotation to this incisor, so I'm going to make sure the incisor is nice and big in the middle of the screen so that Sketchfab will zoom on into it when the person clicks on it. And I'm just going to double click on the incisor here, and it will let me add some information here. I'm just going to say incisor, and you can add a description here that tells the user what it is. You can add links, so to add a link, you would have your link ready. So let's say, for example, I want to link the user to this Wikipedia page which tells them what an incisor is. I'm just going to copy this link, and I'm going to write the square brackets. This is what the text that is going to link to the website. And then in the round brackets, I'm going to put the website, the link, and then hit OK. And then it's going to come up in my description here. And that piece of text is going to then link the user to that website. So let's say I want to add another annotation, but I want the user to view this molar from this direction. I'm going to center it there, flip it around, double click, and then I'm going to put molar in there, a description, hit OK. So now I've got two annotations here. And you'll notice they're numbered 1, 2. I can change the order by clicking and dragging them around. I can also change, so if I zoom out, you'll see that when I click on one of these annotations, it zooms into that view that I had set. I can change that by changing the view. So let's say I've changed my mind and I want the user to view this incisor from this direction. I just manipulate into this view, and then I hit the little camera button there, and that's going to change to that little thumbnail there. And then I can test it, click on it. Yep, it's zoomed to that view. So in that way you can sort of take the user on a virtual tour around a model, because they can flick through the annotations, they can use the arrows down here, or they can click on the annotations themselves. And that will allow the user to get a bunch of information about the model that you might not necessarily be able to include on the model or the background itself. So once that's done, I'm going to save the view. So when the model previews in Sketchfab, I want it to be in this position. So I'm just going to hit this button here, save view. And that's going to make sure that's the default position. And then I'm going to save settings. It automatically saves the settings when you save the view, but we'll just do it to make sure. And then we can either publish if we think our properties window is looking good, or we can go exit. We can go back and change properties if we think that we need to add anything else in here, but we can also publish from this window here. So if I hit publish, it will say your model has been published, and it will give you a link and a button to go and see your published model. So there you go. That is how to upload a model in Sketchfab and edit it. Here is our model with our annotations on there, so you can see if I click on them, click on number 1, that'll give me my molar, and then I click on number 2, that's our incisor, and yeah, that's basically it. I will just add that from viewing your model here, you can add it to a collection. So I usually add it into a collection when I first publish it, just to make it easier to find, and you just hit this button here. It says add to, and it will give you all of your collections, but also your recently used ones to make it a bit easier. And you can add it to a collection. You can get a link to share it by hitting this button here. So that's your sharing link. Or you can get a code for embedding it. And yeah, that's all you need to know.